A massive blackout reported at Iran's underground Natanz nuclear facility on Sunday. Experts saying the mysteriously caused crisis could set the nuclear facility back at least 9 months. And Tehran vowing to take revenge after blaming the Zionists for the incident.
حادثه تروریستی در نتنز در پی حادثه صبح امروز در تأسیسات هسته‌ای نتنز رئیس سازمان انرژی اتمی این اقدام رو تروریستی خوند. از آژانس بین‌المللی انرژی اتمی خواست برخورد کنه و البته گفت که ایران حق اقدام علیه عاملان و آمران و مباشران این تروریسم هسته‌ای رو برای خودش محفوظ میدونه.
Just hours after new advanced centrifuges started running on Iran's National Nuclear Technology Day, the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran shutting down. And the cause? A mysterious blackout, allegedly in part by Israel's hands, that officials in Iran are calling an act of nuclear terrorism. In fact, according to reports by the New York Times, quoting unnamed American and Israeli intelligence authorities, the blackout, originally pegged as a cyber attack, follows a deliberately planned explosion, which completely destroyed the internal power systems supporting the underground facility and its centrifuges, which are used to enrich uranium. The Natanz nuclear program likely being set back at least 9 months, according to reports, as a result. This just as United States Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin arriving in Israel for his historic 2-day visit, the first such visit to Israel by a senior representative from the Biden administration, in which Iran is said to be the main topic. Meanwhile, while neither confirming nor denying having a hand in the incident, Prime Minister Netanyahu did have this to say at a ceremony for Israeli military and intelligence chiefs ahead of the country's 73rd Independence Day.
המאבק באיראן וגרורותיה, המאבק בהתגרענות האיראנית, המאבק בהתחמשות האיראנית, הוא משימה ענקית. המצב שקיים היום לא אומר שהוא יהיה המצב שיהיה קיים מחר. קשה מאוד להסביר את מה שחוללנו פה במעבר הזה מאפסות, מחוסר אונים מוחלט שלא היה דוגמתו בתולדות העמים, לכוח העולמי, כן, שהצלחנו לייצר כאן, בוודאי אזורי, אבל בדברים מסוימים עולמי.
Then Netanyahu going on to add that he wishes for all of those present to, quote, continue holding the sword of David in their hands, end quote. As for Iran, amidst indirect talks with the United States to potentially return to the JCPOA and lift American sanctions on Tehran, Foreign Affairs Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif vowing revenge against the Zionists, especially as Jerusalem has consistently stated that Israel will not allow a nuclear Iran.
In the Middle East, there is no threat that is more serious, more dangerous, more pressing than that posed by the fanatical regime in Iran. Iran continues to support terrorists around the world in 5 continents, threatening civilians everywhere. Iran has never given up its quest for nuclear weapons and the missiles to deliver them. And Iran consistently and outrageously calls for Israel's annihilation and works towards that goal. Mr. Secretary, we both know the horrors of war. We both understand the importance of preventing war, and we both agree that Iran must never possess nuclear weapons. My policy as Prime Minister of Israel is clear. I will never allow Iran to obtain the nuclear capability to carry out its genocidal goal of eliminating Israel. And Israel will continue to defend itself against Iran's aggression and terrorism.
Finally, this alleged Israeli attack also being the second such setback at Natanz, following a fire in July for which Iran similarly is blaming Jerusalem. Joining me now with more on the blackout at the Natanz nuclear facility, political analyst and professor at State University of New York Maritime College, Mark Meirowitz. Mark, thank you so much for being with us. Now, United States Secretary of Defense Austin is in Israel right now to discuss the threats posed by Iran's Ayatollah regime. What are the chances that he or anyone in the Biden administration were given the heads up before the alleged attack?
I mean, how would I know that? I would say the answer to your question is more what my professor in my first poli-sci course told me is the most important thing. Cui bono, who benefits? And I think the end game here is, of course, Israel benefits, but I think the United States benefits as well, because this will postpone, I believe, the progress of Iran in developing a nuclear weapon, and that will buy some time. In other words, Iran's strategy is always to pressure the United States, stating we are going to have a nuclear weapon in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, so unless you make a deal with us, we're going to have a nuclear weapon. Now, this will be a setback for them. So if it's who benefits, then the U.S. benefits, and I think the world benefits to the extent that Iran is slowed down in terms of development of a nuclear weapon, which clearly is what it is planning to do and has been planning since day one to do, notwithstanding all the things that they say at these negotiations.
So in line with that, is it in Israel's best interest to ask for permission or for forgiveness from the United States with respect to committing such attacks, or even ahead of attacks on Iranian vessels at the Red Sea? Do you think that the United States prefers plausible deniability or the chance to reject Israeli actions?
I would move this discussion to another venue, which is the question of how this is accepted domestically in the United States Senate, United States House, and the administration, and how does this all affect the progress of the Iran deal? And there, I think, so I think we're going to move forward beyond this point. I think the visit of Defense Secretary Austin, I believe, know intimately, is intended to, to calm the situation down and make sure that there's no further retaliation back and forth. We've seen it in the ship attacks, now in the Natanz attack. So the United States wants to do this deal. They have put this as their priority. The question is, can it be, halted, or can it be slowed to a point where it will not develop? And I think that it's going to be very difficult to slow it down. I think that that's the main focus at the present time. If you listen to Defense Secretary Austin, I think he didn't mention Iran, but he did talk about Israel's qualitative military edge and the fact that Israel's supplying Israel with weaponry and so forth, and the relationship between the U.S. and Israel, I believe, is a signal to Israel not to accelerate the situation beyond where the United States cannot reach the deal with Iran. I mean, it's a very fraught and difficult situation. You look at the timing of it also, which is pretty impactful, that this happened right around the time that the defense secretary is visiting. So again, I wouldn't be able to speculate, but everything is connected in politics. So obviously it will have an impact. And I think the United States and Israel have the relationship where they can talk to each other about these things. And certainly, I suppose they've collaborated in the past on certain things like this as well.
All right, Professor Mark Meirowitz, thank you so much for being with us.
You also. Bye.
All right, and for those of you who'd like to see the extended 10-minute interview with Professor Meirowitz, please check it out online. In the meantime, again, Professor, thank you so much for joining us.